Welcome, guys, to another episode of Southern Scrap Nation's podcast. It is 9:21 a.m. on April 25th here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm your host, Daniel Jonas, and today's episode will be another episode of Sips and Slips. So we will be talking about MMA news as well as fight announcements, etc. There's no UFC event planned for the next 2 weeks, so we can, there's some stuff we can talk about, more MMA gossip and rumors, and more fun talk, if you will, rather than strictly trying to break things down. So just some updates for you guys. Saturday or Sunday, like post fight breakdowns are now going to be called post scrap analysis. I'll be doing PSAs every Sunday, a little bit easier to market, as well as trying to get some t-shirts together. So I'm trying to get in with 3 t-shirt designs for you guys. I'm looking at, trying to play off the names, some cool stuff coming our way next month. On top of that, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Southern Scrap Nation, and you can find these podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play, as well as our YouTube channel, Southern Scrap Nation. So, what to do about nothing? Let's see. To get us started on the news side, so last week we were talking about UFC Chile and the cancellation of the Kamaru Usman versus Ponzinibbio fight due to Ponzinibbio pulling out because of a thumb injury, leaving the main event open. Usman said that he's willing to take an opponent. It just has to be an ranked opponent, otherwise get the fuck out of here with any offers, which I agree with him. There's no reason for him to main event in Chile, which is, I don't really think about it, even though when I fly to Brazil, it's a hassle, especially flying out of North Carolina. When we lived in Miami, it was so much easier. We had a trip. Essentially, it's an 8-hour flight. Like, don't get me wrong, the flight is long, but it was a one-way trip, so I could go there and back. Now with connections, layovers, it's almost a day trip. So for a fight like that, luckily Usman's in Florida, but even then, a flight from Miami to the top of Brazil is 8 hours. I couldn't imagine the flight from Miami all the way down to Chile. As well as Volkan Ozdemir not being able to compete on this card as well, so the co-main event has been scrapped, even though it's been moved to UFC Hamburg later on in the year. What happened there is Volkan Ozdemir is actually, he's prohibited from flying. He's in, I think, Switzerland right now. So for some reason, I guess he can travel from Switzerland to Germany, or it's going to be after his court date. But he's up on charges for a felony assault, I think, for getting in a fight outside of a bar in Fort Lauderdale, I think defending his girlfriend. Obviously, if you're a UFC fighter fighting an average person, getting hit by Volkan, no time Ozdemir, probably wasn't good. And the guy definitely settled on a lawsuit or something. I don't know what the case may be, but can't fly. Can't fly out of the country. You have to stay where you are until obviously the court date is done and everything is settled. So, like I said, that fight has been moved to UFC Hamburg. So what does that mean for UFC Chile? Usman's still there. If they don't get an opponent for him, I think they should just scrap the thing. But I'm trying to think of who would be a good opponent to step in short notice. Welterweights. Jorge Masvidal doesn't have a fight, but I don't think he's looking to fight right now. And then the rest of the guys either have a fight or they just fought that are in the top. Let's see. Yeah. Actually, because I'll be using the computer a little bit today, I will look up the rankings for the welterweight division. Yeah, so as for that card, my opinion for it, I think they should just go ahead and can't scrap it. Scrap the card or do something. I'm not 100% sure, but personally, it makes more sense to just scrap the card at this point because there's nothing that you have the main event that had to move. You have the co-main event that's moving. There's nothing really left there for you. Um, and Kamar Usman, as much as he's or as much as he's hardcore fans, um, he's a hardcore fans fighter. Um, he's not going to draw that much anyways. Like he doesn't have that marketing draw. What is going on? Uh, well, that's not working. Anyway, so that is the one fight cancellation for the UFC recently. All right, so Bellator also has fights this weekend. They have Frank Mir versus Fedor in the heavyweight Grand Prix tournament. Why I just said that? I don't know which one's right. Honestly, I don't know which one's right. So I'll go ahead and say the heavyweight Grand Prix tournament. I've heard both. I don't know. Anyway, recent news is John Salter is out of the Rafael Lovato fight. That is disappointing because I was actually training with John the other day and here in Charlotte. He's from Wilmington. Used to coach me there. He was one of the coaches at Evolution MMA. I think he moved to Port City Performance. He moved to Port City Performance to do a little bit to do their wrestling program as well as their jiu-jitsu program. He's a beast. Like I don't think people understand what I mean by he's a Division 1 wrestler, right? College wrestler. On top of that, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA fighter. Used to fight in the UFC. Now currently is a top contender in Bellator. The reason why he pulled out is that a state athletic commission of wherever they're fighting, Chicago, said that he had an eye injury or an eye something with his eye that isn't allowing him to compete. It's not anything that he did wrong. It may have been something from a previous fight that is stopping him in that specific commission from fighting. He could probably end up fighting, I don't know, in Vegas or something and not be a problem. I just think that one specific commission, I think I guess it's Chicago, they're just not letting him do it. For right now, it says undisclosed, but if you just go on his Instagram, it says it's an eye issue. It just may be. It would be like Michael Bisping, for example. He's got that detached retina. They put the oil in there. Possibly not able to fight Chicago. They probably take a look at that eye and go, no, not happening. So it's that kind of thing. It's just commission to commission. That one just, that's what Fight week is for. You get there, people look you over, and that's why these things happen. MMA, luckily, is one of those sports, however, that you can replace someone as quickly. Gerald Harris is now replacing John Salter in this Bellator 198 card. Don't know too much about Gerald Harris. But Rafael Lovato Jr., hopefully he wins this so then they can, retry this match. I think it's a really good match. People have Rafael Lovato up there as being one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners in MMA. That's fair. I, however, think that John Salter's wrestling is just on a different level, and I don't think Rafael trains enough of that. There's a difference between being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and a gi, and competing in ADCC, which Rafael has done. I think he's won it. John Salter actually represented the United States at ADCC last year. He lost to Zanji Ribeiro, which that's no big. Obviously he would have liked to win, but it's not something to look down on that you lost to Sanji. You also got to ADCC, which you have to qualify for. For those that don't know, there's qualification matches, and there's East Coast trials, West Coast trials, Southeast trial. I don't know. They have so many different trials. So for him to get all the way there, the United States, it's crazy. Anyway, Rafael is very good at the jiu-jitsu aspect of it. However, John he's on that next level for wrestling as well. There's genetics involved. I'm sure and just talent as well. But I've trained with the guy. It's just that I've trained with high level black belts, right? I've trained with, uh, for example, Hobson Moore, who's an 8-time world champion. Yes, it's a different level of jiu-jitsu. However, it's not the same strength. They can place strength where they can place pressure where they need to due to the years of experience of learning how to apply pressure in certain situations or on certain parts of the body if they want to control or however. Then there's the wrestling pressure, right? There's that overall just smashing pressure. You want to stand up and they're just a wet blanket on you. Or you want to move and you can't. You physically are just stuck under a rock. And then on top of that, with the application of MMA, being able to posture up correctly and throw powerful punches is part of wrestling. It's less part of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu doesn't really, as much as postura, you have to like keep your posture. You hear it a bunch of jiu-jitsu competitions. That's fair, but it's more just not to get swept. But the same pressure isn't. There are pressure passers in jiu-jitsu. There's pressure, fighters in jiu-jitsu. But the same type of pressure that a wrestler can drive his hips down, and he's learned from, you know, um, flattening out backs and trying to pin the opponent. And it's a different kind of smash rather than the jiu-jitsu smash. The jiu-jitsu smash is more like take position, try to get the submission. You're taking position to get some submission, whereas a wrestler, like your goal is to just hold someone down, right? That requires a lot of just physical brute strength as well as leverage and technique, but a lot more brute strength and grinding is involved, whereas jiu-jitsu, it's like short bursts of pressure, and then you're just trying to get to an overall objective of submitting. So I think in an MMA fight, John's knowledge of jiu-jitsu at the black belt level, on top of his collegiate wrestling, it pairs each other well. It's like wine and cheese. Nothing goes better. And I think Rafael, as much as he's got that black belt level for the jiu-jitsu, he's lacking that wrestling level. And that is where you can exploit a really good jiu-jitsu black belt. And you saw it with Tyron Woodley and Damian Maia. Um, you, you can see it with some of those guys where Mackenzie Dern, for example, she has no wrestling. I mean, as soon as they hit the ground on her in the third round, in the final seconds in the fight, she was gonna win the match. Perfect. I mean, unanimously. If she got that in the first round, she probably would submitted her opponent in her first match in the UFC. However, her ability or her lack of ability to finish a single leg stops her from even doing what she's strong at. You need one to support the other. So, all right. So yeah. So John Salter's out of the fight. Um, then other announcements, you got Glover Teixeira and Ayir Latifi scheduled for the Hamburg fight. So you have Shogun versus Volkan, Glover Teixeira versus Latifi. A nice little lightweight or light heavyweight thing going on there. The only person that's missing is Alexander Gustafsson. So what is happening with old Gus these days? Well, he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and he had some things to say. He talked about how his 2 losses to John and DC were big things to him, and he feels like he can get those back. So DC and John took out their Twitter fingers and started going at old Gus on Twitter, saying, and DC going out with a savage comment saying, the only 2 accomplishments that you've ever made in the UFC are losing. One to me and one to John. Just get back and fight. John even tweeted DC saying, I don't even like this guy, but this was a great comment. And then bombarded Gus with some stuff. Man, poor guy. Poor Alexander. I listened to that podcast with Joe. He was very respectful about the 2 guys as well. And as much as they cut bits and pieces of it, if you listen to the podcast with Joe, he talks about how talented John is, and he talks about how talented and good guy DC is. And for that to happen, I just feel bad for the guy. If anything, if I'm Gus, I'm using that for motivation to get myself back in the octagon, make even bigger of a statement. Because he just got done with recovering from his shoulder surgery he had completed, and he's coming off a dominant win over Glover Teixeira, where he uppercutted him 3 times in the face, turned the corner, and put him down like video game shit. Um, and it's sad to see those guys just go after him. But if anything, he's a big guy. He'll take it as motivation, and hopefully, we'll see him back in there soon against maybe one of these guys that wins on that UFC Hamburg card. Probably wouldn't fight a year because that's his teammate, but Shogun, Volkan, probably not gonna fight Teixeira again. But Volkan and Shogun, those are perfectly two good. Those are two perfectly good guys, especially Shogun because he's the guy with the longest win streak in the UFC light heavyweight division right now. Um, and Volkan Ozdemir. I mean, these two they don't technically fight the same way, but Volkan came onto the scene and he went through the gauntlet of the guys that were available to fight at the time and got to fight DC, but he never got a chance to fight the second best, which is Gustafsson. Right? If you want to get up there, right? Anthony got to fight the champ. Anthony Rumble Johnson got to fight the champ, but he also fought Gustafsson, and they had that 3-person thing going on for a little bit. But Volkan kind of skipped those steps. He beat Jimmy Manuwa and he got himself a title shot. So, what to do? All right, let's see. Oh, so Junior Dos Santos and Nogueira, Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, have had their suspensions lifted from USADA after investigation showed that it was tainted supplements. Junior agreed to, I think, a 8-month suspension from USADA, so now the reduced suspension to 6 months, which he's already completed. So he's ready to fight again. I don't know about Nogueira. I haven't really checked on that. He shouldn't be fighting anyways. But these guys have had their sentences reduced, but they've already completed their sentences. One shows the lack of, I don't know, the lack of priority that USADA has for these guys. It takes them months and months and months just to figure out tests. I'm not a scientist in that department, but I'm sure science nowadays, it doesn't take much to figure out if it's tainted or not. I feel like that could be done in an afternoon. If not an afternoon, give me a day at least. I mean, we're on the brink of advanced stem cell research where we're trying to literally regenerate the body in like the most simple terms I can make. And then these guys can't figure out whether or not some pre-workout or some supplement stuff has some other stuff in it. Like it doesn't make any sense that, oh, okay, well you got reduced sentences from 8 months to 6 months. Okay, but I already did the 6 months. Like I might as well just finish up these 8 months. It's ridiculous. I don't personally understand it. These guys try to make money in a way. I know Junior, I follow him on social media, so he kind of keeps up with promotional things, doing marketing, shaking hands, showing up places, cashing checks, that kind of business. But in overall, if you're trying to protect your athletes and you're trying to get them back in to make big paychecks, especially a guy like Junior who's fought in the UFC for so long that the Reebok paycheck favors him. He's also a heavyweight. It favors him to get back in there. It doesn't. And for example, there's some good fights for him in there. Junior versus Ngannou. Junior versus, it doesn't even matter at this point. Junior versus Derek Lewis, even though those two are fighting. Junior versus anybody at this point. He just lost from the title. I think he had surgery or something, but then he got busted for that tainted supplement, and now he's ready. He's ready to come back. And as for Nogueira, man, I'm surprised his is tainted. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm not, but it's one of those things where the dude just needs to stop. Like if he's one of those guys that I don't care. If Vitor after this needs to go to Rise and pump all the TRT in his body possible. Nogueira's the only guy that I will say is like, just stop fighting in general. You've taken too much damage at this point. Both the brothers have taken too much damage at this point. And they talk about like all the plates and different replaced body parts they have. It's scary, right? And they still want to go fight. You have an empire of jiu-jitsu that you can just do. You don't. And there's nothing left for you guys to prove. Da 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 da. We'll get into the Frank Mir versus Fedor in a little bit. I just want to go over some more stuff, such as the follow-up of this weekend. What's the lightweight division looking like in the UFC and what to expect in the future, as well as this Leslie Smith deal. This Leslie Smith stuff, it is kind of shady in the practice. It's shady in the practice that legally it makes like you can do it. Legally, the UFC can do it. They have a great legal team. They can get away with whatever they need to get away with on this kind of aspect. They made sure all their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed. However, the way that they went about it ethically is kind of fucked up, right? Leslie Smith has started this new union. She wants to start this new, or she started this new unionization of MMA fighters, or this company to unionize MMA fighters. It's actually started to come off pretty well, right? We've had failed ones in the past, the MMA Fighting Alliance or some MMA, I don't know. It was some long name. But either way, that had, Donald Cerrone, TJ Dillashaw, Cain Velasquez, started by owner and shady businessman, God, I'm blanking on his name right now. Give me 1 second. But anyway, and that kind of fell apart, right? For owner. Anyway, and now this project spearhead, Bjorn Rebney, that's his name, and that was started by Bjorn, and that kind of fell through. Anyway, so Leslie's Project Spearhead's actually picking up some steam and doing well. I think it's picking up fighters, and they're keeping kind of quiet. They're not making this big press conference about it, right? They're kind of building up an army, if you will. And then when it's time, when she has enough support, then she can unload what she needs to. But when they did the Bjorn Rebney thing and the MMA thing, it just didn't. They had some big name guys, but when the UFC pushed back, the big name guys were like, "Oh no, but I still need to make that paycheck." So with Leslie Smith, the whole business of her opponent not making weight, then refusing to continue to try, so telling the doctors that I'm just not going to make weight. She went early in the morning, knew she wasn't going to make weight, told them that she wasn't, allowed her to just start eating, and was just like, "Hey, we'll pay you the extra. And Leslie was entitled for an extra 20% of the purse if she kept fighting, which Leslie was still cutting weight at that point by the time Aspen Ladd was waiting. So Aspen came in at like 9 in the morning as soon as it was ready to start, weighing in on Friday. She knew she wasn't going to make it. Told the commission, listen, or doctors, I can't do it. So at 9 or whenever it started, she could stop and then go ahead and start eating. Right? She can drink water. She can stop this grueling weight cut. Leslie didn't come in until the very end, made weight. So that whole time, Aspen was already eating, going back to normal. Then she finds out that Aspen cannot fight or cannot make weight. They offer the 20% purse. This is a reminder for everyone, Leslie Smith's last fight on her contract with the UFC. And she goes, okay, well, that's kind of fucked up. I don't know if I want to do that. And then the UFC countered her offer with, we'll just go ahead and pay you your full win-loss bonus, or your show money, your win money, all equaling to around $62,000 or so. If she didn't go through with that, she would have just made like 30 grand if she won, right? Because of the extra 20%. Or regardless if she won, she would have just made 30. So any smart or any person, any smart person would be like, I can get into a cage and fight someone and only make $30,000, or I can just go ahead and take 60 G's and not do anything. So, for me, fuck yeah. I mean, she already fought Cyborg. What else does she have to prove? She doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. But that also meant that she refused to fight. That voids her contract. Um, Aspen's team even came out saying we offered $5,000 extra, which Leslie's team rebutted. No, they didn't. They did not do that. So as soon as the UFC gave her that offer, she took it. It essentially null and void her contract, as well as completed her contract. They paid her out. So then the UFC just cut her. Which was like fucked up. Because they saw that this girl was doing something to help fighters get unionized and become like a real sport, and then they kick her to the curb. Oh, you're trying to help out your fellow fighters? Fuck you. We're trying to run this shit. We're trying to make the most money we can make, and then we want you guys to fight like gladiators for us. She's looking to press legal action. I don't know how far that's going to go. Leslie Smith, as much as she has, Leslie Smith has one of those cases where, as an average person looking onto this, you go, yeah, that makes sense. You're rooting for her. Fucking fight the good fight, girl. However, on a legal standpoint, the UFC lawyers and legal team, I'm sure that contract is one of those that ironclad, they put it in front of the judge. She knew what she was signing. End of story. She can argue. She can say whatever she needs to say. But it's just not gonna fly. The judges, I mean, it's, the legal document, right? So I think she should press legal action. I think this should have more spotlight to it. I think a lot more people, fighters included, should just know that this is going on and offer support in any way possible. If anyone knows a way to support her, I guess funding Project Spearhead is a way. If you're a fighter, joining Project Spearhead. I wish I can look up to see if there's stuff that maybe this podcast can do. I don't know, but either way, she needs all the help she can get. She'll be fine fighting wise. She can always go to Bellator. I'm sure they'll pick her up and give her a platform there. But we just need to stop shady shit from happening anymore in this business world, especially with people putting their lives on the line. Not to the point of I say that in a way, they're not putting their lives on the line for anybody but themselves. However, it's still dangerous, and they're doing it for fans. As much as some of them love to do it, as much as some of them would do it for free. I don't know why, because y'all are prize fighters. But you don't want them to be 50 years old and suffering, right? Because no one would want to wish that on you as a fan. So don't wish that upon the people that you praise. Right? You want to help these people out. You want to give them an outlet for when they're done with this. They have somewhere they can go. They can kick their feet up. As you sit there comfortably in a cubicle or comfortably in your office chair, or wherever it may be. These guys are every day, 2 to 3 times a day, training their ass off, getting punched in the face more times than you will ever in your life. They do it in a day. Just to get into the cage with another person. They'll fight 10 people in a day just so that they're ready to fight one person on Fight Night. It's fucking ridiculous, right? In the words of Nate Diaz, there's someone on the other side of the world training to beat my ass Isn't that kind of fucked up? It is. If you look at it, it's kind of fucked up. You look at it where, could you imagine if you're sitting comfortably at home, just knowing that there's another dude or female, whether it be down the street, all the way on the other side of the world, just training, Ivan Drago style, just, you know, if he dies kind of stuff. And you just got to be okay with that. You got to train harder than that guy. You have to sleep well at night, knowing that there's a dude out there with your face on a heavy bag, just punching through it until the sand comes out. Uh, uh, you know, it's intense. It's an intense feeling. It's an intense thought. But just to like understand it to a point. Ever get those thoughts of, man, if I was in a street fight, this is what I would do. And you can kind of feel your heart starting to race because you're starting to think of like a high intensity situation. Oh, this is what I would do. And then all of a sudden your heart starts to, and you start getting yourself hyped up. They live with that pretty much every day. Yeah. They'll make your hair turn gray. Yeah, it's intense. So, if you know a way to support Leslie Smith, please do. Support these people. You know, support these fighters. They do so much for you as a fan. Try to help them back. All right, so let's see what else. Let's talk about the lightweight division real quick. We had Kevin Lee win his last fight, right, against Edson Barbosa, and he set it up before. He said, "I'm gonna beat Edson worse than Khabib beat him," and he did. And then after that, I'm gonna fight Khabib, and maybe he will. He should, because if you're gonna give Conor that treatment, then you for sure need to give Kevin Lee that treatment. If Conor calls something, right? And I know people are not a huge fan of Kevin Lee because of his brash attitude, even though other people are brash. I don't know what it is. If you're calling your shots and you're making the prediction, then you should award the guy that gave those predictions. So now Khabib is sitting there. Khabib won't fight till December, November. He's already stated that. You have the top 5 are Khabib, Conor, Tony, Eddie, and Kevin Lee. I think Dustin Poirier. No, wait, hold on. Champ is Khabib. Conor number 1, Tony number 2, Eddie number 3, Dustin number 4, and Kevin Lee number 5. So we talked about this the other day. You could do Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier too? Ooh. Possibly. Or, no, hold on. Khabib versus Conor has to happen. Tony versus Dustin Poirier. Tony versus Eddie Alvarez. Or Eddie Alvarez versus Kevin Lee. Tony Ferguson. Dustin Poirier versus Kevin Lee or Tony Ferguson. Throw it up something new, and then eventually, I guess the winners of that little tournament right there fight each other, and then Conor and Khabib, winner of that gets the fight. I don't know. I don't know why Tony got stripped from the title either. So he should be more in the more of the talks of Tony, Conor, and Khabib fighting in that like little merry-go-round that they got going, and then Eddie, Dustin, and Kevin Lee all fighting their little merry-go-round that they got going down there. It's tough, man. 155's tough. Paul Felder has been hinting a fight with James Vick. That's intense, even though he kind of accepted a fight with Dan Hooker. I don't know, this past weekend. I don't know. Either way, Al Iaquinta's still there because he just fought Khabib, so now he's spent time with the greatest lightweight right at 150, the champ. So he feels like he can get back in there and fight and beat him. Um, there's a lot of options. There's just a lot of options at lightweight that just need to get sorted out. And I think as fans, we're gonna like whatever happens. I think we're living in this we must kind of mentality. We must have this happen. They have to fight each other. It has to be this guy. It has to be that guy. But I think once it comes out, it could be Dustin Poirier versus Tony Ferguson. And we'd be like, oh shit, that's actually a pretty good fight. We'll find a way for us to understand whether or not it's a good fight. We'll break it down and we'll realize that these guys at 155, no matter who you put them against, it's killer's row. So anyone on a good day could beat anybody. I'm happy with any fight that happens. I think wasting time trying to matchmake on that, leave it to the professional matchmaker. But the professional matchmaker even has to understand that. I mean, no one's gonna be disappointed if you do anything. Some people will be disappointed if whoever doesn't get a title shot or whatever the case may be. But to be fair, the only two people that have the big enough fans to make like a wave of disappointment in someone not getting a title shot are the two people that are already champions. Khabib and his Khabib army, and then Conor and his Conor army. Both those guys, I mean, their fans are happy. Both their fans can say that their favorite fighter is the champion. You know? And then everyone else, like if you're a Dustin Poirier fan, and no offense to Dustin Poirier, but I ain't fighting against Khabib's army if I'm Dustin Poirier army. All right, if I'm in Tony's army, I'm not fighting against Conor and Khabib's army. There's just too many of them. Right? They just have a huge following. They have a huge country behind them. Eddie Alvarez has a state behind him. He's got Philly behind him. But the rest of the guys, they don't have this massive following to push them. Anytime I do something about Khabib, I get Khabib fans on my commenting, and that's it. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. Could you imagine the UFC posting anything about Khabib, and all you get the first 40,000 comments are just hashtag Khabib time, hashtag Khabib time, you know, hashtag chicken, or to Conor, or whatever. You know what I mean? So the lightweight division, you can do pretty much whatever you want, but I would just I think this is UFC's time to really sit down, plan, put a real push behind whatever they start doing in that lightweight thing, in that lightweight area. We just had all the lightweight. We just had, 3 weekends of lightweights, and they were great fights, all of them. So give it some time. Focus on the welterweight training. We got welterweight shit happening. We got interim titles about to happen. We have what we were gonna have, Usman versus Ponzinibbio. Then we have Darren Till versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And then we have the interim championship, Colby Covington versus RDA. Let that simmer. Then move on to the middleweight division. Work that kind of stuff. Which we are. We're doing Romero versus Whitaker too. There's some stuff going on there. Light heavyweight division, do what you can. And then heavyweight division, that's what UFC 226 is about. So right now, we did our stuff with lightweight. Let it fester. Let it sit there. Let the UFC put their heads together and figure out what their next move is there, so we can focus on the other divisions. All right. Let's see. So we went over that. Atlantic City averages 956,000 views. Not bad. Almost 1 million views. It's not the lowest, so that's good. We've been getting hit with some of the low ones recently. Yeah. Stuff is just people talking shit. Like talking shit. Oh yeah, let's talk about this real quick. Greg Hardy, former NFL player, or not even former NFL player, former football player, that is a convicted domestic abuse, whatever. He convicted domestic abuse, is fighting in the UFC, or is fighting for Dana White's Contender Series, and it's fucked up that they're gonna allow this guy to fight. The NFL wouldn't take him. We're gonna take him. I mean, you're giving this guy that beats women the literally the platform of fighting. Just like people want to watch Floyd Mayweather get his ass kicked, all right? Because he beats women. He's brash. Oh, people don't like Floyd because he's black. No, people don't like him because he hits women. It's the same thing with this guy, right? No one's watching this guy to go, oh man, I hope this Greg Hardy guy gets his title. No, we're watching him to get his ass beat. We're just hoping one dude gets his hands on him. And once one of these professional guys gets their hands on him, Derek Lewis is already talking about it. I hope they put Derek Lewis with him. Derek Lewis should be the inaugural. If you wife beater, you get put up with the black beast. Did Travis Brown? Right? That's his jam. I'll feed every domestic violence, you know, um, yeah, suspect or whoever. Um, I would place him against Derek Lewis. That would be their punishment. They had to fight that dude. That dude or Ngannou. But these guys, maybe, no, I'd place him against like a DC. Someone that's just going to grind them out for 5 rounds. Do what DC did. Get them in crucifix and just elbows. Right? So to give this guy a platform, especially the UFC, leave this dude to rise and don't give him a door. Leave him be part of like freak show stuff. We don't need him over here. Oh, well, that'll just get more people to watch him. It's great marketing. No, it's a terrible example. What are you trying to tell people? Hey, you can be a convicted felon. You still got a job here, right? And not only just a job, not like they're just putting him on a prelim fight pass on a card that no one fucking wants to watch. They're putting him on Dana White's Contender Series, which means he has a backstory, which means they're trying to promote this guy, which means that they're trying to put UFC money behind him. You know who also came from the Contender Series? Sugar Shane O'Malley. Look at him now. He got his whole line of fucking. He's got a whole strain of weed now. We can't have Greg Hardy getting a marketing team behind him. We don't need like Greg Hardy marketing out his image, especially fighting. Fucking fighting. At least with football, they could have been like, fucking Ray Lewis killed someone. And, it has nothing to do with fighting. It's just like football. Like, well, he's a great football player. Ray Rice punched his wife in the face in the elevator, but, well, it's not like football. He didn't do football. But if Ray Rice was an MMA fighter, he punched his wife in the face just like he punched whoever he fought in the face. And you're like, oh, Jesus. So just imagine that. This guy is getting famous for punching people in the face, and he's like, and what, he's just going to take it to his next relationship? Now if you're his like future girlfriend, you can just watch him on TV and go, oh, shit, I'm going to come home to that? I don't know. It's one of those things where you can't promote this guy. You can't. You just got to leave him. Right? Especially nowadays. I'm surprised obviously it's fighting, so there's not like a lot of feminists in our, sport picketing shit. Probably loving the idea that men are hitting each other. But someone's got to like say something. I can't believe the people at the table didn't put their heads together and go, we're making the right choice? Yeah, we'll be fine. Yeah, no one will look him up. Anyway. Yep, I hope they put him in there with someone nice and just, well, whoever, I forget who's the guy that he's fighting in this contender series or whatever, but I think I just beats his ass. Hope this other guy gets the title or gets the shot for beating this guy's ass. Yeah, that'd be great. Alright, so before we close out today, we'll go over just the main event for the Bellator card. There's not much to it. I mean, it's just two old guys fighting, to be honest. But it's a fight that we've wanted to see. I will acknowledge the fact that it's a fight that should have been made years ago. It's a fight that I, as an MMA fan, could have only dreamed about in the UFC when both these guys were in their prime. Fedor Emelianenko versus Frank Mir. These are both guys that kind of have similar fighting styles. Frank's a little bit bigger. Not necessarily similar fighting styles, but guys that are really good at two things. They're really good at jiu-jitsu off their back, which is an anomaly for a heavyweight, and they've got fast hands for a heavyweight. Frank is just oversized, and I think Fedor struggles with bigger. I don't think he struggles with bigger guys, but Frank's been out for a little bit, and Fedor's got hands for sure, but on the ground, it's a different story. I think Frank's not necessarily top pressure, but I just think that the ability that Frank's going to have to physically impose himself and maybe go for a submission, it's not going to be as easy for Fedor to just get out of. I think this is one of those fights where I think Frank slaps on a submission, and it's because the way I look at it is, yes, Frank has ring rust, and that is a thing. But if things go bad for Frank, well, he can just go back to his bread and butter, which is submissions. And if he goes to the ground with Fedor, it's kind of like the Fabricio Verdum aspect of it, where he may get hurt by Fedor, but as soon as he goes to the ground, the strength of Frank Mir is going to nullify the ground and pound. It's going to cause an opening for Frank to just take advantage of and submit him. Unless Fedor can get a clean shot and starch Frank Mir, I think Frank will do well. If not, Fedor will fight Chael Sonnen. The winner of this fight's Chael Sonnen regardless, but we'll see. Have to see Chael versus Fedor Emelianenko. But I'll take Frank on this one. Huge fan of Frank Mir, and I think Frank Mir's. I just think size is going to be the difference. The size is going to be the difference on this one. Yeah. All right, guys. So that is our episode for today. I will be going out of town this weekend. Back home, I'm trying to start this thing until I get it going. I'm not going to really talk about it, but I got things in the works that I'm trying to iron out, and hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have some good things going, like really big good things. I'm excited about. But yeah, we'll all coincide with this podcast, kind of. But I'll keep you guys up to date. Like I said, we're trying to get shirts going, so we might be doing giveaways in the future. So stay tuned for that. Also, look for it on our social media. Look for it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Southern Scrap Nation. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. More viewers is always a plus. More subscriptions is always a plus, guys. Trying to get better production as well as other things. So, I appreciate all the support. Appreciate you guys. And until Sunday or Monday, I've been your host, Daniel. And this has been another episode of Southern Scrap Nation's podcast. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Stay tuned.